In early December, New Zealand held its final auction of ETS credits for 2024, and in a bit of a surprise, some actually sold. This has not generally been the case. Since 2022, only one other of the quarterly auctions has resulted in sales. So is this good, bad, or something we should be concerned about? Welcome to Sustainability Takes New Zealand, a YouTube channel created primarily for New Zealanders to highlight news, events, developments, plans, and ideas related to all things sustainable. In this take, we'll be talking about the New Zealand Emissions Trading Scheme, NZETS, and its impact on carbon emissions in New Zealand. So just to get us all on the same page, the NZETS was created in 2008 as a way to help control carbon emissions and was based on the Kyoto Protocol. There have been some adjustments to the scheme over the years, so we'll focus on how it works today. The NZETS is a cap and trade system where the government sets an upper limit on GHG emissions, supplies NZ units that represent 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalency, it's commonly referred to as carbon credits, and businesses buy and sell these units depending on where they sit with respect to their actual emissions. For example, participating businesses that are emitting GHGs will need to give the government 1 credit for every ton they produce. They can either buy these from the government or on private exchanges. In this way, a price is established for GHGs. By reducing the amount of credits available in the marketplace, the resulting increase in price makes it more expensive for organizations to emit GHGs. In theory, this incentivizes lower emissions behavior. This scheme applies to most, but not all, sectors of the New Zealand economy. Specifically, it includes liquid fossil fuels, stationary energy, industrial processes, waste, synthetic gases, and forestry. Notably, it does not include agriculture. A couple of other fine points. Some activities are required to participate in the scheme, some are optional and up to the individual people or organizations, and the scheme is focused on upstream activities in the supply chains where most of the direct GHG emissions are likely created. There are 3 basic groups who participate in the scheme. We'll call them emitters, reducers, and traders. Emitters emit GHGs and have to pay for the credits they submit to the emissions trading register. Reducers capture or absorb GHGs, and they are awarded credits by the register, which they can then on-sell. Traders buy and sell the credits as you would any other financial instrument like company shares. They do not use these credits to balance GHG emissions. Now, conceptually, this is a simple system that relies on market forces to drive desired behavior. As it becomes more and more expensive to emit, organizations will change their behavior and emit less. On the other side of the coin, organizations will be encouraged to adopt capture or absorption activities to gain a financial benefit for doing so. As the total number of credits are reduced, the total GHGs emitted will reduce. Simple. Just one small problem. The system doesn't work, at least not yet. GHG emissions worldwide continue to rise, and in New Zealand, we have not really had any significant change during the entire period of the ETS has been running. So what are the problems? Fundamentally, I think there are 2 important issues: market forces and actuality. I'll explain. Market forces is the easiest. Simply, in order for the scheme to drive behavioral change, the cost for credits needs to be greater than the cost of continuing to emit. Up to now, this has not been the case. In New Zealand, the market price has hovered around $60 per credit. It's been estimated this price needs to be more like $100 per credit to actually drive behavioral change. In December 2024, the government announced a reduction of the number of credits that will be available in 2025. This is a good step. Reducing supply generally increases prices. This is largely thought to be the reason why some credits were actually sold at the December auction. Those individuals and organizations active in the ETS trading market may have viewed this as an opportunity to buy low before the prices increase in 2025. Whether this drives actual behavioral change on the part of the emitters remains to be seen. Actuality is a much more complex matter. There are 2 issues here. One has to do with the accuracy with which the carbon capture avoidance activities are measured. It's quite difficult to do, and we're historically quite bad at this. Let's take forestry as an example. Planting trees is a very popular approach to carbon capture, but the amount of carbon captured is frequently overstated. Beyond this, however, is the question of life cycle and lifespan. A freshly planted forest does not capture the same amount of carbon as a mature forest, nor do commercial forests remain forever. They are harvested, which removes their carbon capture function from the environment. I'm also a bit concerned that climate change has resulted in an increasing frequency and severity of forest fires around the world. This is an even bigger problem. A great many of these fires have destroyed forests involved in ETS schemes, and the result is not only their loss as a carbon capture site, but the fires cause the immediate release of all their stored carbon into the environment. The second aspect of actuality is whether or not a capture avoidance activity represents a new endeavor. A properly functioning ETS system will drive behavioral change, and organizations will take actions they would not otherwise have done. Currently, the system can include activities that would have happened anyway, not just those that are a result of ETS-driven decisions, the replacement of an emitting activity, or as a way to generate a windfall income. Take our commercial forestry people as an example again. Those forests were going to be planted anyway. It's how the organization makes money. But now they can collect, in some cases, six-figure bonuses in the form of ETS credits that played no part in the original decision-making process. The same concept applies if an organization builds a new solar-powered facility but keeps its old building with a gas boiler still in operation. The decision for the new building was related to growth, not GHG reduction, which hasn't happened, or the ETS scheme. There's one more really important issue with the whole ETS approach. Organizations use this as a way to balance their emission output, which is entirely fair, and thus claim they are net zero carbon emitters. Their actual GHG emissions are offset by the credits they purchase. And I think it's really important to call attention to the fact that they remain emitters. In no way does buying credits from someone else actually reduce the buyer's GHG emissions. It just offsets their emissions, which prevents the total GHG levels from increasing. It does not, as it is currently functioning, actually result in a decrease in GHG levels. So, how does all this really work in the New Zealand context? As I mentioned a moment ago, GHG emissions in New Zealand have been pretty flat during the entire time the scheme has been in operation. That's not too surprising given the rather unique structure of our economy. Let's break the economy down into three segments: energy, industrial, and agriculture. Starting with the big one, ag represents about 53% of our economy. Then energy accounts for about 36%. Now that's any form of energy generation. Our electricity is in pretty good shape as it's nearly all renewable, but petrol and older coal gas energy sources still dominate. And finally, the huge variety of industrial processes that fills up the remaining 11%. That's everything from milk dryers to drywall production. So where are we going to reduce? Well, ag is notoriously difficult. It's not that people aren't trying. All sorts of individuals and groups are making massive efforts to address elements in this space. We've got things like electric cherries, special grass varieties, innovative breeds of livestock, and new fertilizers, just to name a few. But progress is slow and, for now, pretty small steps. GHG levels haven't changed much here. Beyond that, this sector is not in the ETS scheme, so any changes will be motivated by other drivers. In the energy sector, our electricity supply is almost all renewable, but that's only a small portion of energy. And while new facilities are proposed or being built, you can see my earlier post on Fast Track Bill, these will go to meet growing demand. They don't replace any existing systems. There are still any number of old coal, gas, wood boilers around the country that contribute significant amounts of GHGs. While some organizations have chosen to replace such systems, quite often organizations choose the offset path afforded by the ETS scheme. They keep their old coal boiler running, buy credits, and claim net zero GHGs. Now, this is the most cost-effective solution for the organization, but very little change in total GHG emissions. By far the biggest component of this segment is transportation, the burning of fossil fuels in our cars, trucks, planes, and ships. We've got about 100,000 electric cars in New Zealand, which is a help, but adoption has slowed recently, and mostly for cost reasons. Other forms of transport have made little progress in GHG reduction. And yes, Air New Zealand is trialing some renewable fuels, but that's a trial. We're quite a ways from regular service. Finally, we have all the industrial activities, those things that result in the creation of pretty much every good or service we consume. While every little bit helps, there's not much to be gained here. This is a small part of the overall New Zealand economy. This is another group where purchasing offsets is frequently more cost-effective than making process changes, which can be extremely expensive. But some organizations will choose to actually make the changes. Fonterra is planning to install an electric dryer in their Southland operation. So other than GHG reduction being an absolute good thing, what scale are we measuring against? Well, following the Kyoto and Paris agreements, we're committed to reducing our GHG emissions by 50% from base year levels of 1990. So just quickly, let's look at our overall economy. With ag not participating in the ETS scheme, that leaves 47% of our economy to deliver a 50% overall reduction in GHG levels. In other words, GHG production from those two segments has to go to effectively zero or negative. Two problems here. First, the likelihood of either of these sectors achieving an absolute zero GHG emission in the next 25 years is, well, zero. Remember, this is actual GHG emissions, not a net zero offset. The second point is that in the intervening years between 1990 and 2008, when the ETS scheme came along, GHG production actually rose by something like 20%. So we have quite a bit further to go. Even though our GHG emissions effectively peaked in 2006, according to the latest figures, we're still 14% behind the 1990 levels. So to meet our obligation of a 50% reduction, we actually have to reduce our GHG emissions by 64%. So to be a bit blunt about this, our ETS scheme is not going to get us there. Not the way it's currently functioning. The current price for units is not driving the necessary behavioral change to actually reduce GHG emissions. At best, we're getting a net zero offset. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's certainly preferable to a net increase, but it's not an absolute reduction in GHG levels, and that's what we really need. So either the price needs to rise to the point where it motivates the behavior you want instead of motivating financial transactions driven by investor markets, or we're going to need a more powerful tool. Thank you for listening to the channel. I'll be posting more in the very near future, so please check back. I'm always looking for feedback, so please feel free to comment and hit the subscribe button. It's the clearest indication I have that viewers are appreciating what I have to offer. Thanks again.